know these things. So, but one of the biggest things is, like when I hear people say, why don't you ask more questions? And I'll often ask, well, we've given the superintendent a set of goals we want. This is how we want you to run the district. We've got the policies in place. We get agenda items that are complete. They meet the goals of what we've asked her to do. The staff has done all the work. The information's in the packet. We read it. We ask those occasional questions. So we repeat the questions, but what happens is we get there, there's no need to argue or debate because everything's being done the way we've asked it to be done. From the start of the year all the way through, we set goals. Then when you get into procedure, specific items, it's all the way we've already asked it to be done. So why pontificate? Why hash it out?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's working the way we wanted it to. So we don't need to rehash all those reasons why each time.
I appreciate the hint, because then I'll look to the report to know that'll be like, ask the question.
Yeah, that's your
discussion down, so that going in what you're,
Well, and really anything, when you get, because it could be any part of this, you might have questions on it.
Right, yeah, but I mean, for discussion wise, I think it's important to say, I had these questions, these were the questions that I'm bringing to re-clarify that, and then answer them in the.
Yes, Brianne, I'd say Brianne, Mike, and Rick have all done that on a number of occasions, where they'll call me ahead of time to ask me a technical question, and then they'll rephrase it again in the meeting, so that's helpful.
I'll probably need a good bit of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's even, the consent agenda is the regular stuff, but there's even a time where, because you're block voting on consent, it might be that I'm good with 1, 2, 4, and 5, but I'm not good with 3, so we pull it can be pulled out and made its own action item to vote separately. It doesn't have, that's all within the purview of running.
Yeah, I feel like I've seen it both ways. The last few months has been sometimes they're voted on all together, and then sometimes it was well, wait a minute,
And I would say that there's 2 things I'll add, and that is, I think that part of the change in the board's operation has also been based on direct feedback from the board in the first couple of years about preparing for meetings. So if you look at board packets from 2017 and before, and you look at board packets now, the team has really gone way more into depth in the packet prep than what used to be done. So what I heard a lot when I came was a lack of transparency. There's no transparency. And what I realized was, no, they were putting everything there, but they were putting hundreds of pages of very dense documents with no explanation, so it wasn't understandable. And because it wasn't understandable, people felt like it wasn't transparent. So we really redesigned a lot of how we put stuff forward. So we use a slide deck format, and then we'll put the supporting documentation behind it. But the first component is going to be, here's a general overview of what we're talking about and here's why, and we try to put it in just regular layman language and not use edgy jargon, so that everyone is kind of brought along with us in the process. And I think that has helped a lot too, and I give the team full credit for that, because they spend a lot of time putting those documents together to ensure that it's understandable, because again, our goal is to ensure that the board is properly informed on the matters that they're going to be voting on. So there's been a lot of change in management report, and we're always very open to feedback from the board around those items that, especially Stacy, as you're starting to review this stuff and really get into it, if you're seeing something that would be helpful or a change, that's something I'm always open to hearing about, because again, we're trying to work in service of the system and the board itself. The second thing around the consent agenda that Rick was talking about, I would say 9 times out of 10 when something's been pulled out of consent, it's typically been because of a conflict of interest. So my first 2 years, we did have a board member whose spouse was employed by the school district, and so when there were certain personnel decisions being made or whatever else,
Contract up for vote.
Contract, MOU, something like that, he would move it out of consent to have it be a separate voting item. He can approve all the other consent agenda items and then abstain from the thing that was a conflict of interest. I think that's been typically the main reason, and then sometimes there's just been an item that a board member feels very strongly about that they can't vote yes for in consent, so they'll pull that out. It will become its own voting item, and then if they want to have 4-1 or 3-2 or not be in a unanimous vote, then they can do that. because it's pretty rare to oppose an entire consent agenda, but sometimes there will be an item that is of concern, and in that case, it should be pulled out. So we try, my team's edict for me is don't put stuff in the consent agenda that could be of controversy or a problem, because that needs to be its own separate item. So we try to keep consent agenda to very basic district operational matters, so it's usually the budget, personnel, donations, and meeting minutes. And other than that, the other
Usually
basics are
MOUs,
locals. But we're not gonna throw a big whopper in the consent agenda. That's absolutely gonna be a problem, and it's not good practice or procedure either. So usually these items are pretty much standing items and they don't change a lot.
Yeah, those first four are pretty much every time. And like the policies, because it'll be the third time, that usually ends up in the consent, because we've talked about it twice. Now we're voting, so we've pretty much cleared up everything before this, yeah. But yeah, but that's the thing, we can, like you heard, talking about the OPMA, regular meetings can adjust a bit. It's just, you don't wanna throw new things in, because then the public doesn't have a chance to know what we're doing. But we can shift things around a little, it's not set in stone. But for the most part, we haven't been doing a lot of that because we haven't had to.
Yeah, I'd say with that being said, the goal should always be to work it into the agenda ahead of time,
Yeah.
and I think we've done a good job with that,
Yeah.
to do that.
We just haven't had to.
Yeah.
So there's been no reason to, because it's, I said, they're giving us what we've asked them to give us.
Yeah, so you base that on, like, say you're gonna pull something out of that consent agenda, do you base that on the questions we come up with earlier in the week? Or is that something that you do, like?
I don't pull it out,
Yeah.
so that's actually a really good question.
Like,
So
how does the process look?
the process, so it's usually a 2-week roadmap from, like, as soon as a board meeting is over, the very next day, I'm working on, the next meeting, and we usually have like a working agenda that's been, in discussion over time. So the 5 steps back is we have in our policy series reports that are required to the board throughout the school year, whether it's an RCW or WAC. And so Corey created a listing of all of those reports that are required. And then we look at, are there particular times of the year where those reports are required? And then we create a planning document for board meetings. Like, we have an idea of like when schools are gonna do school connections, and we try to roadmap out policy batches and all of that. So we plug all that into a kind of a planning document. And then after that, we use that to start building the base blocks of this. So Corey, usually in the summer, will kind of skeleton out all the board agendas. She knows the basics and puts it all in there. As soon as the board meeting is over, on Friday, I start to review what's coming up. And then on Monday, the executive team meets and we talk about the next 2 to 3 board meetings. And that's where I'm directing them about, reminding them we have this school connections coming, we have these particular reports that are due by OSPI or whatever, and this policy batches come out, so all of you need to go do your homework on the policies or whatever it is. So I set them the task. Then they come back and we'll get everything in. And they let me know on Monday, like, okay, we're behind on this, or we're ahead on this, or could we add this, or we know we have this MOU, and Corey is sitting in the meeting and she adjusts the agenda. And then Tuesday, I sit down with the board president and vice president, and I run the agenda with them. I say, here's what's coming up, here's what's looking like, what do you think? And we usually try to look at the immediate meeting coming up and the next one, just to kind of have an idea of where we're going. And then they provide feedback. And that's usually if there's something on consent that they have concern with, that might be where they adjust that. And that is the president and vice president's purview to do that. It's really not mine.
Right.
So that's where sometimes things will adjust. The only other time things will come off of agenda is, we've had a couple times where we've had a late change to a process, or we're trying to get an MOU or an interlocal done, and we think it's done, and then it's not, and we'll pull it off. Personal recs will be a late add.
Usually, something happens there, and that's, if somebody is taking a job somewhere else, or it needs the resignation from our district before they go somewhere else, then we will do a late add, adjustment to it.
we try to really minimize that, so when I came, I heard a lot from the public about lots of like sneaky Pete, last minute moves, agendas shifting, changing, quicksanding around. I really worked with the team to stop that, and if people don't have their stuff in by Friday at 3 o'clock when we go to post, I tell them then it's not happening. The only area I've made exception on that is personal recs, and it's typically because there will be some matters of urgency around that, whether it's disciplinary or it's career or
The life stuff.
it's
Sure.
life stuff. And you know, I don't want to be the person who keeps someone from getting their dream job because we are gonna like hold tight to this rule and not make an adjustment to personnel recs for them. When that happens, I do notify the board and let them know there's been a late post so that they are able to go back and review it and make sure that they're ready and they understand there's a different document attached to the agenda at that point. But we really, even then, that is extraordinarily rare at this point. We're pretty on it, and it's the
It's
team's
usually a
credit.
summer, I was gonna say that time, it's
It's
usually a
summer.
summer, like June, July, August, some building administrators are getting hired and,
Lot of stuff.
yeah, that's usually when that happens and,
Cyclical.
yeah.
So we try really hard that once something is on the agenda, then if we need to pull it, that's okay, but we do not do late ads. And I think I've harped on the
Yeah.
team enough
Yeah.
about that for the last few years. They're pretty used to it, cause for the first couple of years, I would have people kind of traipse down my office like, so we really need to get this on the agenda. I'm like, and you are too late. So, it's been getting some used to it, but now we've gotten, I think, into a good pattern. So that's kind of how it goes. Once the agenda's posted on Friday, the board's been really great. I would say most board members review the agenda items over the weekend. Typically, I will field a couple of technical question calls on Monday or Tuesday from board members. And then the meeting comes and we have a meeting.
Or if your weekend gets away from you and you email later in the week and you say, I know I'm too late to get this to the room, but I won't say that that's happened a few times, I'll say it's happened a lot.
I was gonna say,
It's happened a lot. So I looked at this the first time, and then I really looked at it the second time.
But,
The following question.
so you're aware, I think one of the things we would want to do, Stacy, is just to kind of identify like is there a day or time that we just kind of put on the books for a while to make sure that I'm available and I just book it into my calendar, just to get through some of the technical ins and outs of different items and just make sure you're, feeling like, okay, I know what I'm voting on, so I can understand that. And I always encourage people to re-ask the questions again, but it's also just helpful to give you some processing time. Like, I think waiting until the meeting and then having all these questions and in 3 minutes you're gonna make a vote, I think that sets a board member up to be in a really tough spot.
Yeah, for sure.
If they're, especially when it comes to the consent items that are highly technical but typical, it's just getting kind of used to the cadence of that.
Yeah, that was really helpful for me in onboarding, because like you said, you're gonna start seeing the same things over and over, so if you can identify them up front, it will actually save you a lot of time you would've probably spent a couple hours looking at it not knowing, so just kind of, that dedicated time up front will save you later on to know what to look for.
And I mean, I think it's new for everyone who gets into, whether you're the superintendent or a board director, it's just different. I was used to this kind of work from other positions that I had held, but not in this capacity. So I would say that first year I was spending a lot more time just making sure I understood the ins and outs of everything. But also we were making a lot of adjustment to how we were presenting the information to make it better. So that took a lot of discussion with the team as well. The other thing that I included too, because I anticipate this would be a discussion, is we usually create a board script. So if I say by we, I mean Corey. And it's just right behind the October agenda. She put the board script that goes with the board meeting agenda. So this is helpful just because it helps usually whoever's running the meeting stay on order of the meeting and be able to not lose their spot. Did it get skipped in yours?
Oh, do you not have it?
Here. Reading now.
Oh, there it is. That's
Oh,
it.
there it is, yeah.
What it is. Oh, it's, sorry, it doesn't say
Yeah.
on top.
So it's just different when you're up there, but then also, we always like to be uber prepared because, stuff happens and life happens, and if the board president for some reason is unable to attend the meeting, then I want the vice president to be sure that they're ready to run the meeting. If both of them are gone for some reason, I have a copy of the script, with me, so that if someone else has to run the meeting and we still have quorum, we can get through the meeting. So it's just a helpful item to have, and a lot of this is pretty rote, so it's the same meeting to meeting, but Corey will customize it for every single meeting and all the items that are on that meeting agenda. But this is provided to the board chair and vice president about, I'd say 3 minutes after she posts the agenda, she'll send the script off to, well, the last couple of years she's been saying to Nancy and Mike, and then they've got that as well to just be prepared for running the meeting.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with that script is it'll be helpful, just pick, one of these motions and just kind of read how it goes, you know, do I have a motion, is there a first, is there a second, just kind of how that all goes along. It's confusing.
Okay. So since we've been kind of talking about meeting structure, so the December 14th meeting is, always a different meeting than most of them because that's the board reorganization. So, at this point, there are, the oath of office is gonna be the first thing off the top. So Mayor Erickson will come and administer that. Then Nancy will start the meeting, and then is going to exit as soon as the oath is administered, and in talking with council, you will run the meeting at that point to get the officer slate through for the president vote. And then once the president is voted on by the board, then that person immediately assumes the chair, and then they'll drive the rest of the meeting.
Okay.
So because we do not know how that's all going to unfold, what I always do for this meeting is ensure that all board members have a copy of the script. Because any board member may be elected as president, and so once they take over, they're going to need to have that script in front of them to help drive the meeting. So it is always a little bumpy and awkward. I think it's helpful for the board to kind of review the script and just make sure they understand the order of how that's gonna work. And I think one of the things that typically gets very confusing is what's voted on by the board versus what is just appointed by the board. So the president, the vice president, and the ledge rep are elected positions. So the board votes on those 3 things in that order: president, VP, and ledge. And then after that, it becomes a discussion where board members indicate their interest in serving, and then the board discusses and makes appointments. And that's done by kind of a majority indication. It's not a technical vote. That's by board policy. So we move through all of those things and then get into just the regular action or regular agenda for the rest of the meeting.
I have kind of a maybe silly question, but, cause I don't know like how it works, sorry, didn't see it here. How does it come that Mayor Erickson is the one that gives us the oath of office, or what's the system around that?
So it's been tradition more than anything, but there's no formal statute about who administers the oath. She has just always been very willing and able, and is in kind of an elected capacity for her to then have other electeds come in. It has just worked for us. Every school district does it a little different.
I just didn't know if that was something that had room for any sort of like, so just personally, this is nothing negative, I don't have a connection to the city of Hallsville, honestly, or her or anything, but I was approached already, so I just want to bring it to you, that I didn't know if it would be a possibility at all, but I would really love to start off in a good way and be able to maybe have Chairwoman Caldera be able to do that, or be a part of that. I don't know if that's possible, I just want to bring that out.
Sure.
I was asked like if that would be something, in which, I mean, I know they're just super, we've had a lot of change. I say we, but they're my employer, but we are like a family at work, but also, that government has had a lot of change, and I think it's important to them, and to her specifically, to start off her, administration with a good welcome, you know, of the school district. I don't know if that's possible.
I have no idea.
I just kind of thought
What I
would-
can do is talk with council and go have Corey do a dig on like, how long have we been doing it this way and where's the genesis of that? And so I guess.
You like wrinkled right from the start, so I don't mean to do that, but I was asked to ask and check into it because it's something that they would really, like to be a part of. And I thought that was kind of special, so I felt really a little extra by that, so, I just thought I would ask. I know,
The only thing we gotta keep in mind, I mean, is we do represent two sovereign nations, so, I mean, if we're inviting one leader, you know, why would we not invite the other, so.
yeah, I think in this case, it's a lot just to do with my connection with Port Gamble, and the connection within the school district and their support to this point. I know Kelly has been a huge support to me, within this kind of, venture, I will say.
I hear
And so
that.
they've talked about it a lot, just with.
But we would wanna invite Leonard as well, is kind
Yeah.
of the thing, is we would not want
Yeah.
to only invite one and not the other.
Oh, I think invite everyone,
Yeah.
but I just.
What I would
they
say
were
is, I
asking me,
think
so.
that you have that relationship with them, but now you represent all. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
that's gonna that would be something that I think what Mike's trying to get at is, I don't know if there's a way that like the person who's been elected gets to pick who swears them in. I think
Yeah.
that's the question you're asking. So that's what I will go look at and find out, and if everyone who is elected in gets to pick who swears them in, then you can make your choice. If it, as an institution or an entity, for us to say we are going to have the Port Gamble tribe officially swear in board members and not
Yeah.
include the Suquamish
Right,
tribe,
right,
I think
right.
that's inappropriate.
No, I was thinking exactly that, is that you see what can be done, 'cause I think it would be cool if, I know we offset it, but if you have 2 seats, 3 seats, whatever, I just think it's a good way to start a term and a good way to really start those relationships and a good way with your new, directors. And really, I think it is important to invite everyone and, you know, bring them to the table, so that's absolutely I think that's when they brought it to me, I think that was the spirit of it, was like, just having that community support. And I just really appreciate that my whole community has, you know, put me here and, trusts me, and it's kind of a new adventure for me, and it just feels like a good way to, respect that relationship with how they, you know, had asked me about it, so.
Yeah,
Could be kinda cool,
It's a good thought.
I think
I
it's a
would
really
definitely
good
say we need to ask the lawyer, just because while they are elected officials, they're not elected officials of the state of Washington. They're officials of their own sovereign nation,
Yeah,
and that could be the language of the statute
and I think
somewhere.
that's why they asked me to ask, like,
Yeah.
to see what that
You know,
looks like.
cause she's been swearing in our school board, she swears in the city council, the judge swears in the mayor, so it's you know, it's all kind of within the state. So that would be the only thing, is I think we would need the legal ruling of, cause we're crossing a line.
It just feels weird too, though, like,
Yeah.
cause she's the city, and like, for me, like, and two, I think it sort of, from, I think some perspectives confuses it to what the city and the school board, or school district and school board have, in common. It's like, I know, cause again, I'm District 5, and I know I'm 1 of 5, so I get it, but, and the whole district, but, out there, I'm like, well, why wouldn't it be the county commissioner, or why wouldn't it be, you know, like, it just like,
Because we're split.
it makes it tough, because, she doesn't really, isn't a whole over district, you know, wide either, so I guess that, it just brought up questions in my mind. I was like, is that how they always do it? I just didn't know how,
Who
how
does
that worked,
Farmington?
but,
Is it Mayor Wheeler?
I think Wheeler does theirs.
Yeah, and they're split between county and city,
I just think it's interesting for, some of us may not,
yeah.
it just is a
Port
weird thing
Orchard,
to me.
South, it's probably the Port Orchard mayor,
I
they're
think
split.
we can look at it and get an answer
It's
back.
easy enough to look
Yeah,
at and
so
figure out.
I just think it'd be kind of fun, like a good opening, or sort of way to